Right. Well, as someone interested in disrupting the nation state, I think DAOs are very important, and learning about these early experiences with them is definitely something we should dive into this conversation. Just to get a sense of each one of the projects you guys are involved with, can you tell us a little bit about the value in assets these DAOs are managing, your DAOs are managing, and how many participants do we have in these DAOs?
All right, so does this work? So Moloch DAO is a very simple DAO that only has about 400 lines of code. And that was launched around like February this year on ETH Denver. And the purpose of Moloch DAO is really just funding infrastructures, especially to accelerate ETH2 development. And when it started, it has 20-something members, and now I think it expanded over to 50. And the assets under management, I haven't checked the Ether value, but I think it's like about $2 million, $1.8 million in dollar value. But the assets under management, it's a wrapped ETH. It's just Ethereum, yeah.
Yeah, so Maker, at one point, I believe we had 2% of all ETH in existence locked up backing Djie, so it was like a huge amount back when ETH was around 85, 90. Now it's gone down a little bit to maybe 1.3%, but it's still, it's probably one of the largest smart contracts in production right now. And for the part of the DAO, the participation is still not as great as we want it to be. There's, I was watching Ryan's presentation, and we've done some things right, but there's a lot of things that we could do to increase participation, and there's stuff that I want the community to build that I haven't seen yet, such as people pooling their tokens and creating voting pools such that you don't have to be aware all the time of what's happening, but maybe delegate your tokens to somebody you trust, right? And so far participation is kind of around between 5-10%. We want to make it at least 20-25 in the coming months. But I believe it's governance on-chain that's already kind of sort of working. So it's interesting times.
Cool. So Aragon itself, it's an app platform, so there are more than 600 organizations that are using it. But in this case, we are talking about the Aragon Network DAO, which is the DAO that manages the project itself. This DAO holds about $50 million. And we've seen around, I would say token weighted, like around 7% participation rate was the maximum, and usually we see like 3, 4, 5.
When you talk about participation, you mean 7% of tokens, right?
Yeah, token weighted, not address weighted. That's much lower.
Right, so I'm Shaun, the co-founder of Djie DAO, probably one of the earlier DAOs out there in the space. Currently, right now, we manage close to about 400,000 ETH in the DAO itself. The DAO has the incentive to actually allow any proposal or voters to actually vote on any proposals that will support the Djie's Go-Back token ecosystem. We launched this for 2 quarters so far. The very first quarter, we saw a very high quorum number, almost close to about 30 to 35% of the entire DGD token ecosystem actually participated on the DAO. Right now, the most recent quarter, we are seeing close to about 30%. And on average, we have been passing close to about 1,400 ethers to date. So the entire DAO's treasury is made up only of ethers, and we disperse it through any proposals that comes by.
So to anyone that is interested in starting a DAO project or a community based around the DAO, what are some good advice to bootstrap or to get things started?
So one cool thing is a lot of the projects that are forking Moloch DAO. I was also like one of the first 20-something participants in Moloch, and I told them many times that I believed that the right way to do it was to use Djie instead of ETH. But now I believe that it was the right way to go to use only ETH for that. But then we saw stuff like Metacartel just fork the code and add Djie into it and do their own thing, just like a bit more grassroots. And now they're even funding other DAOs. I forget the name, the one for kickback. Yeah. So it's like DAOs funding other DAOs.
There's even a DAO for a presidential candidate in the US.
Yan DAO.
Andrew, the Young DAO.
Yes, that's funded by Moloch. It's actually one of the most controversial, say, like, proposal in Moloch, and for that proposal, the participation rate is around 30%. So in Moloch participation, we don't have a quorum, so people just kind of like, they vote on things they care about, and the things they don't care about or don't have enough knowledge to really vote, they just don't. So I think that's very interesting design, yeah.
I was this close to rage quitting Moloch because of the Yang DAO. I voted against it, but that's one of the cool things about Moloch, that if you don't like the way something is going, you can just like grab whatever's left of your money and split. And it's good that you have that decision. And I mulled it over, and then I said that, well, no, I still want to be part of this, so I'm not going to do it. But just the fact that I have that opportunity, that's what makes it so powerful.
That's really interesting. The rage quit function, which is this little innovation in the Moloch contract, it's a very interesting game theoretic idea. Maybe you can describe a little bit about it, how it works.
Sure. So usually in DAOs, there's like different philosophies of design, and everybody thinks participation is interest. So there's like various ways to address participation. There are some like, you can do a dynamic quorum, depends on the issue you're voting on. Sometimes certain issues has a higher quorum requirement, certain has a lower. That's one way of designing it. And the other way, I feel like this is actually really interesting in Moloch's case, there's no minimum quorum. And in the case that someone votes maliciously, or in the case that you really disagree with the direction, the outcome of the vote, you can take away your shares. You can get the money back, so you can leave. So basically, it's like, okay, are you on board? And it's like you can withdraw the fund, so it's like never something that's fully locked up for you. So in that way, because there's no quorum, there's also this like explicit delegation. So if this issue is being voted on, I agree with it, I don't have to really bother to vote because I already agree with the outcome. It's only when I disagree and I feel really strongly about this and then I go through the voting.
So it keeps the community of the DAO cohesive around the decisions being made.
And also a lot of times, for example, if something's really technical or it's outside of my domain, I trust certain other members to do better due diligence than me or be more well-informed than me to vote. So explicitly, not everybody needs to vote. And I think it's even better to force someone who don't have all the knowledge to vote on something than just like have them just delegate, And I think to implement proper delegation, it takes it takes a lot of code, it takes a lot of complexity. So I feel like Moloch did this in a really simple way where you can delegate explicitly by design,
So one question here. So this DAO, which is Moloch, which, as far as I understand, is a money-losing DAO to fund Ethereum's development and push it forward, like a grants DAO, was trying to fund a presidential candidate's DAO. Was that like the scenario, and then people were like rage quitting? That's interesting.
That's it. Yeah, that's interesting. Something to also that is very important for DAOs is participation. Well, what techniques or what ideas can incentivize users to participate and engage more in the voting process?
Yeah. Right. So I saw Ryan end off the quote with the best sci-fi job, or rather sci-fi related kind of like experiences working for a DAO. And we do agree that most of my token holders out there, they don't really want to work for free. So what we have as an incentivizing mechanism is actually for everyone to participate in the DAO, and in return they actually do get some form of a reward fee that's been paid back in go-back tokens that Djie issues. That's called DGX. So this whole mechanism that if you vote, you work for the DAO, and in return you actually get the fees that comes from the Djie go-back token ecosystem, is something that has been incentivizing a lot of them to come forward to actually either police the DAO itself to censor projects and proposals that may not be efficient use of capital. So that itself is creating a very good tight-knit community out there in Djie. I'm not sure how many of you guys out here who actually sees the Discord channel that we have, but in my opinion, it's probably one of the most constructive and efficient one I've seen so far.
So in the case of Maker, we've always told the community that this is not a token that you just hold, that we want people to actually participate because they're essentially, they have the future of the DAO in their hands, right? If they vote in like bad risk parameters, they risk breaking the system for everybody. So we made it clear from the start, even back when people were selling, and I wasn't even part of the project, they were selling the token on forums. It was like, okay, if you have it, you're gonna want to participate eventually. And we've seen that more with community, that a lot of investors that may have MKR in their cold wallets or in custody, that's a big issue. But hopefully there will be tools that will enable people to participate more. And one thing I've seen a lot of projects do, and we don't do it yet, but we should, is just NFTs. It's like, give out NFTs every time you vote. It's like, if you're the one that actually manages to pass a vote to increase the stability fee or decrease the stability fee or get a new token incorporated into the system, then just hand out NFTs for everything.
Like getting a stamp in your document when you vote in an election.
Voted, exactly. That.
Or getting the finger, like in Venezuela, you get the finger and people take pictures of their finger.
There are plans for that, because with multi-collateral DAI, there's going to be a lot more votes. At first, it's like bootstrapping everything. When we did single collateral DAI, the whole system required only one vote, because we bootstrapped everything on the smart contracts, and then we said, okay, vote either yes or no to this system. But the system already had the ETH token, it had all the risk parameters, it had all the different oracles, and the community just had to say like yes, no, right? But and in multi-collateral, we're going to do several votes. There's one vote for every single collateral. There's votes for saying, do we want this oracle, this one? So we need to increase participation, and want to feel the community needs to feel included on all of this.
Yeah, and actually one very easy way to increase participation that doesn't even require crypto economic incentives is just to have people that are very invested into the mission of the DAO and have like smaller DAOs. So I think in the case of like, you know, the three projects here, we have like huge amounts of token holders, and so that may, you know, make participation lower. In the case of Moloch, for example, since they have like a more close-knit community, they may have higher participation because you have a higher barrier of entry. So like once you enter, you need to participate, or you feel the urge to participate more, and that's great. And something that has been working out for us as well is like sub-DAOs. So you have like the big DAO that decides on like, you know, the most important things in the whole project, and then this DAO decides to fund other DAOs that are like smaller participants. So for example, our grants program, it's a money-losing DAO in which you have multiple participants, and the big DAO, the big Aragon DAO, decides who's going to be there and how to fund it, and then that other DAO decides like who is going to receive grants, and that's all the like grant management. But we don't ask token holders for every single grant decision now with this new kind of sub-DAO process.
Aragon had a very interesting election this year with a whale ghost voter.
Yeah.
How you guys dealt with that? Do you have any suspicion who the whale might be?
No, I have to say I tried to track it a little bit on Etherscan, but that's the beauty of it. Like you don't really know, and it's also beautiful in a way, but it's also like scary in some other way, right? So, for example, there was we have this model where instead of having one team, we have multiple teams, and this DAO selects the teams that are going to work on Aragon, right? And so there was one team here which got funded this actually the last election for a whole year of funding. And you know, they were like, all right, are we going to get funding? Are we not going to get funding? It depends so much on these token holders, right? And so I think they didn't sleep for like a couple of days, but they got funded and they are super happy now. But it's so interesting because like, you know, it's both a bug and a feature, but I think it's more like a feature. Like it's a freedom of like, you know, you cannot go and point someone because they voted no, because there's no way to find them, and that's beautiful for me.
I think one of the earlier problems that we saw in Djie's DAO is that the DAO itself was not fast enough. So I think aside from just incentivizing people to come forward, either in the revenue share model or being involved in some form of the actual governance, I think being a fast DAO is extremely important right now today. I mean fast, I mean by the entire decision-making process. Everything from committing a vote to revealing the vote. This entire process right now in Djie takes anywhere between about, let's say, 10 to 14 days. But if the entire process could actually be streamlined down, I think that could actually help create not just only engagement, but a lot more efficient use of capital.
And what are some recommendations for off-chain coordination, for community coordination in the real world?
I mean, I would like to see tools that build to make the voting less costly for the participants and voters. By less costly, I mean like reduces the time they need to actually dive into the topic. Just take Maker, for example. Like I think a couple of months ago, I checked, okay, all this like proposals, and I want to know like what exactly is being voted on, what are some arguments for the proposal, what are some opposing arguments, and it's kind of really fragmented on different platforms and different like websites. Some are on the Maker's website, some are on Reddit, some discussions are probably in private groups, Discord, some are in Telegram, just all over the place. So as like a token holder, maybe I don't have the time, I'm not really investing in following all of this in all these different platforms. I just want to have a summarized view of what is going on, what exactly I'm voting on, so that like if that tool exists or if that place exists for me to really learn about the subject I'm voting on in a less like time costly measure, I might be more inclined to vote. Otherwise, it's like this may be too much, it's not really worth my time.
Sounds like a good idea to submit a proposal to Moloch for this, right?
Yeah.
So we developed a forum precisely for this because there was governance talk on the Reddit, on the Rocket Chat, on Twitter, on the Thursday governance calls. We're trying to move everything into the forum, and then also hoping that somebody, I mean, you can delegate your MKR to me and I'll vote on your behalf. If you trust that I'll make good decisions. Actually, one of the coolest things for me that's gonna happen now is Compound is thinking of allowing MKR into a platform, so you'll be able to actually borrow MKR, and that creates some great game theoretical, because, okay, you're gonna be able to rent MKR to vote on stuff, but then as an MKR holder, is it in my best interest to put it up on the platform so others can borrow and make decisions really with my token? So that's gonna be something that, I don't know, hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll see if it happens, and if it does, like, what's the amount that MKR holders are willing to say, okay, you vote with this and maybe screw up the system, I don't know.
Yeah, super interesting. And we had this vote in which it was like a very polemic vote about the Aragon Association buying Polkadot, like heading into buying Polkadot with the ETH that it has in the reserves. And I think Amin posted on Twitter like, hey, who can like lend me $1 million ANT or something to change the... I don't think no one did. And also there was like a smart contract circulating in which you could basically like rent ANT and like lend it for voting. I think there are a couple interesting ideas in the Aragon forum about this. One of them is about rewarding people who vote, and the other one, which is the one that kind of targets this problem, is lock-in. So you may have to lock for like a period of time in order for you to vote, to make sure that you're aligning in the long term, that you are not going to just flip the tokens and that's it. So I think that's interesting. And actually going back to this question about the forum, like Aragon's forum is our fastest growing product. Wow. It's just crazy. Like the amount of participation there just kind of exploded. So I think having a forum is like a must for any project that wants to have open source open governance.
I just want to chime in regarding forum as well. I think one of the features that's currently missing in Djie's off-chain governance is the idea of a token-weighted forum. Because right now we do see that some token holders out there, or rather like majority of them, who actually have a say, are perhaps probably not online or not participating in any kind of like discussions. But having a token-weighted kind of forum would then allow anyone to actually censor themselves and actually to see what kind of real ideas are coming from people who either have been KYC'd or have some form of a real judgment in this case. There's a lot of, I'm sure you guys would agree with me that some forums out there are not fair, right? When you talk about having trolls or any kind of like fuss coming from people who don't really have a stake in your ecosystem.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of people who are like the loudest, some of the loudest in the community. Sometimes they don't have skin in the game, right? I have a Discord bot, like alpha version that only lets you join channels if, say, you have a CDP open with over, I don't know, you can set it at 1K DAI debt, or if you have just over 5 MKR, then you can join and talk. Otherwise, like, it won't let you in. Yeah. Just like signing a message with a key that controls some of that either as a chat or as a forum, that would be a good way to
I think there's a lot of beauty, though, in just interacting with people on the internet without knowing exactly who they are or how many stake do they have in the platform, because then you have like unbiased. It's like Twitter, right? You better follow like an anonymous account, and you get the pure tweets rather than following someone and then you having this influence image of this someone and their role in their status, right? So I have like mixed feelings about it.
So on my way here this morning, I saw this tweet that said different ideologies scale at different sizes of communities. Communism works very well at the family level, social democracy at the town level, libertarianism at the great big markets. Probably a libertarian wrote that tweet. But what I wonder is, how far can DAOs scale? How can we replace Argentina with a DAO?
That's a good question. I would say, you'd agree that Latin Americans were kind of fucked up in a certain way. So
they're preaching to the choir.
Yeah, there's a certain amount of coordination that you need that I don't know if it would scale at least now to like a country level. I would say we should start with just, let's say, a neighborhood. I know that Argentina could benefit from a better currency than the peso, right? And maybe if we frame it around that, I think that countries like Argentina, they're primed for decentralization because we're a society that does not trust central banks. We've seen what happens when government comes in and says, hey, we're going to freeze the country's bank accounts, and now you're not going to get access to your money. And my grandparents, they died without access to their life savings, right? As long as a lot of people that we know. But I would start, like you say, more at the maybe neighborhood level. With all my friends, I'm trying to get them interested in this kind of thing. Just country, I don't know if I've been surprised before. Maybe in 5 years, it'll be possible. I don't know.
Yeah, and to give you an answer, I think yes, from a technical perspective, like when thinking about what DAOs really are and what human organization really is, it's like a permission system. It's like an access control list, basically. So like you can withdraw money from your bank, you can sign a document with a notary, you can marry, you can do all of those things, right? They are permissions. And so when thinking about how to encode in Aragon, for example, back in the day, we thought about, all right, let's just build this huge social graph of this entity can do this, and this other one can do this as well. And then you can have these super complex governance structures that are basically like permission systems. So from a technical perspective, I see no reason why this cannot scale, and I think programmers in this room will agree, like it's a huge ACL, like the whole world is a huge access control list, basically. From a go-to-market perspective, I agree it's going to be way harder, so we got to start small.
So please.
Oh, and just sorry, we need identity on the blockchain for that as well, because otherwise it's still going to be like
that was my next
right?
question.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think DAOs probably works very well on organizing a small group of people like Malak or Miter Cartel, like with a shared like purpose or a mission to coordinating their work. That's proven to work and is very effective, I think, so far. But in terms of like growing into larger, like managing a country, managing like a city, even managing a bank or become like DAO, I feel like that's kind of scary still. I think there's a lot of research needs to be done. There's a lot of like issues, attack factors that we have not yet have really good ways to address, like buying vote, for example, like vote manipulation and identity issues and laws. So like I think not yet, but maybe, I hope so, but I don't know. I'm open.
Yeah, on the other hand, sorry, Santi.
No, please.
On the other hand, I think that like open DAOs are the ones that really add a lot of value. Because like smaller DAOs, we cannot really do most of them in like a smaller setup with your friends. You don't really need a lot of trust with like a group of people that you already know. It's like huge DAOs where you don't trust each other, where really like the DAO concept shines. So I think it's hard, but we should pursue it.
So I was going to ask about identity. I know Aragon funded some efforts like Right ID.
Yeah.
Seems like one of the most important still missing puzzles where there's a lot of experimentation. What have you guys been looking into the big identity problem faced by crypto?
I'm a registered human at Humanity DAO, but that's it's a good first effort. I was happy to see that. It allows a lot of different things, but it can still be gamed on a fundamental level, so I don't think we're there yet. But really, being able to identify a human in the blockchain, that's some of the stuff that was being talked before about maybe, in the case of Maker, over-collateralization. It's like, yeah, there's no way, we need for you to provide more value than what you're lending. Otherwise, I don't know where to go and break somebody's thumbs if they default on their CDP, right? So, but yeah, that's at least one of the most basic things that real identity on the blockchain could provide. Access to cheaper loans, that's one. A better voting, of course. And I don't know, I'm sure you guys have thought of a lot of...
Yeah.
I think the beauty of DAOs or even participating is about being anonymous to some extent. Right now in Djie, we only KYC what we call moderators, people who have a little bit more skin in the game, people who are involved in making decisions early on to actually vet and allow any proposals to move on into the public kind of like phase. So I don't agree with the idea that potentially all DAOs should be KYCing every single individual within this whole group of people, because firstly, it might not be efficient use of the operator's time. But I do think that in the future to come, having some form of anonymity is important. We just need to be sure that the people who have a bigger stake in the aftermath of the decision making should be made clear to the public.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm like an anti-KYC maximalist. I hate KYC, so I totally agree. I think identity comes handy for user experience. Like, I think that's cool. So maybe even if you have like a nickname, maybe you have a nickname and a photo, right? And a link, and like, you know, some metadata there that can make user experience better. But I agree that like KYC is a no-go for me.
I'm not saying that I'm anti-KYC or the other. I'm just saying that, yeah. In any case, like, you know, having some form of anonymity would speed up decision making. That's what I feel.
Yeah, I think KYC, identity doesn't mean KYC. Identity on the blockchain doesn't mean we have to verify your ID with like your government issued ID with a selfie. Like sometimes pseudo identity works well enough. Like there's like a few members in Moloch that are totally anonymous. I don't know who they are, but they have this social like, you know, identity where people like know, oh, they have like they participated in the Ethereum Genesis sale, or they own certain social accounts that we know this person's legit. I mean, that kind of identity is also, I think, useful. And very useful in those like creating identity on the blockchain. It does not have to be linked to any ID or anything. I think that's two things. KYC and this is like not really the same thing.
Can you tell us any controversial decisions that have been faced by each the DAOs that you have seen in action?
Buying polka dots.
Oh, that was a big one.
Yeah. That was, yeah, I don't have much learnings more than ANT holders love transparency and they are very radical on things that they don't consider transparent. And also, you know, on one hand, I was a little bit sad that it didn't go through, but on the other hand, I was like, oh my God, like these ANT holders, like you cannot fuck with these guys. Like I don't know who they are, but like they were so thorough and like asking so many questions, and like that was nice to see. Like if you have a community that is that way, I prefer to have maybe this proposal made, you know, half a year from now again. And maybe it passes that time, but like, you know, ANT holders being like the ones that really decide what goes through or not, and being very, very diligent about it. That was nice to see.
In our case, right now, the initial token list for multi-collateral DAI, I believe the vote either ends now or just ended a few hours ago, and we had an initial list of 7, and what I thought was going to happen happened something completely different. Like some tokens were voted a lot in favor, some just, it seems that they're not going to pass, so we may up ending launching with less than the 7 that we proposed, and that was a good thing. And it's one thing to look at the votes, it's another to actually go into the forum and see everybody's decision, why they arrived to that decision. So I think that's going to be controversial and possibly the next list in a few months. And if somebody ever wants to, from the community, wants to vote in either WBTC or TBTC or some kind of Bitcoin on Ethereum, I think we're gonna... TBTC? Yeah.
You're being lobbied right now.
I'm gonna talk about it later today. Yeah.
So for Moloch, the biggest, like the most controversial subject, it's a young DAO. That proposal, some member almost rage quit because that passed, because it kind of deviates from the original purpose of the DAO. But the idea is also like the purpose is really flexible. It is what the members voted to be. Sometimes you have something that may not fit in, but if people let it pass, it passes. So,
has anyone rage quitted yet?
Not really. Not in the sense of like they really hate the outcome of certain things and they rage quit. No, but more for like they're cashing out their grants. That's also through the rage quit path.
Right.
Maybe we should rename that, but yeah, but no one has rage quitted so far.
That's an interesting thing to watch. So Mariano, you're in a couple of DAOs. How is that experience? Like, are you paying more attention to DAO politics than to traditional politics now?
Yeah, it really changed my mind. I used to be not interested in politics at all, and just my work at Maker, I had to like learn the hard way a lot of stuff. And then Moloch, it just like seemed so interesting. When Amin and Cassandra, when they did the initial summoning, Denver, I believe a couple of days later, I just said, hey, I want to be on the initial list because this seems so interesting. Most of my time is still that I work day to day at the foundation, at the Maker Foundation, so that takes up most of my time. I would like to be a little bit more involved. I'm just working on my first proposal to actually get some grant money for a project, and I can't even manage to do that yet, so yeah. If you really want to do it, it takes time. There's like 50 members, but other than Amin, who works a lot on it, a lot of people just like put out their money and they just hope that everybody else votes in good conscience. But we should have more participation. That would also be good. So
to start wrapping up, how do you see the DAO space evolving the next decade? Where will we end up seeing DAOs in traditional governments? Will we end up seeing what are your expectations of this space for the next couple of years?
I'll probably start off. I think that the DAO study and the entire study of DAO itself is still in the very early phases right now. The entire governance of Djie right now is still entirely on-chain. I think in the future to come, DAOs should be a lot quicker, and the aftermath of any consequence of the decision that's being made by the DAO should be borne by either every token holder or every stakeholder that's involved. I think right now a lot of the consequences of the DAO is only being borne by the foundation who actually launches the DAO. Hence, token holders do have some form of a misaligned interest in the DAO, personally I feel. I think it should be evolving into a period where DAO should be a lot faster. That's just what I feel for now.
Yeah, I think DAOs will not end up in traditional governments. I think they will end up replacing them. That's like our vision here. And so I think also we will find some breakthroughs in terms of governance. For example, Footarchy, I'm super excited about Footarchy. There is this team that is going to launch an Aragon Footarchy experiment a few months from now, and I'm super excited because like that's something novel. That's something that we haven't done any time before in humankind. And so trying out those new governance experiments, I think we're going to come up with some breakthrough that is going to make human organizations so much more efficient and produce so much abundance for the next century.
Yeah, I think what I hope we see is that we don't shoehorn what we know about governance in the real world into the DAOs, but more like let all of these DAOs that are being created just like run their course. Some of them might fail, some of them may succeed. I hope that a lot of those succeed, and then maybe we can learn something different from these kind of organizations to apply to the real world before eventually they take over, which I hope they do.
I think the DAO sentiment is trading really high. I feel like things like, like the DAO, people are in this like PTSD stage and everyone's scared of like, what if like I let a DAO manage $1 million of assets, what could happen? Like I feel like this year you see that recovery, you see people start to experiment more, starting from Moloch and also different DAOs. And I think like in the future we'll see, hopefully just in the very near future we'll see like definitely more DAOs to organize different efforts and the more assets being being managed under DAO. We probably are going to see some DAOs with a focus of investment, which is something that was like, was like a fiasco last time when it being tried, and hopefully this time it will be better. Next time we try it, and I think there will be some successes and there will also be some failures, but I don't think the failure will be as bad as last DAO.
I remember a tweet from you, Luis, at the beginning of the year saying that 2019 was going to be the year of the DAO, and we're halfway through it, and it definitely feels that way. And let's hope more great things happen in the future into the space. You've been great panelists. Thank you so much for doing this. And let's go to the next talk.
Thanks, Santi. Thank you.